man from Georgia. Let me go get as much as I can to put it in story form and words so people can actually see it. Because people don't see numbers. They don't. I could sit here and tell you that 2% of incarcerated fathers and 8 to 10 of mothers have children in foster care. I could tell you that 45% of children live with fathers or mothers when their mothers go to prison. I could tell you all these stats. 1.5 million, but it's actually 2.3 million people are in jails or prisons in a year in our country. That the percentages, the closest percentages to any country to us as far as incarcerated are people in the Middle East that are killing each other on a daily basis. We got more people in prison than 5 other countries combined, the United States does. I could tell you all that. I could tell you how it's not necessary that a little boy or little girl will go to prison because their mom or dad's in prison. What I can tell you is they will probably go there because they're living in poverty, and because the poverty helped get their parent did not think right. You're in the right thinking. Their thinking wasn't right, so they looked at drugs or theft or other things that ended up getting them in prison. And so the whole situation is that the symptom got them in prison, the symptom of poverty. Also, that there's other symptoms that it's a generational curse, if I may, if the whole family, the kids, that's all they see is drugs, alcohol, imprisonment, and poverty. There's a higher likelihood that they will end up incarcerated than somebody that's a 2-parent household living on not even Easy Street, but Easy-er Street.
Yeah.
But all of that to be said, it makes a whole lot more sense to say, Jody, 23-year-old mother of 2, lost her job, couldn't feed them, got caught shoplifting. After she got caught shoplifting, she had a record. She did everything good, and then she had a DUI. Nobody says anything's right with drinking and driving, but then she has 2 strikes against her. Third time, she met a man. They were driving. They got pulled over. There was drugs in the person's car. She knew nothing about it. She had 3 strikes. She goes to prison, loses her children, and now she's a convict. I could give you statistics all day, but those things happen every day to somebody that looks just like you, that looks just like me, and that's how people end up in institutions. But if you have a mental illness, two out of 5 are going to go to prison, not because of what they've done, but primarily because of that mental illness. So, I like stats. I do. But the stories are the thing that affect me. And I'm hoping this interview, I'm hoping this book, I'm hoping some politician or some person reads this or hears this or thinks about this and said, what can I do to prevent somebody from getting on this wheel that is going to be spiraling downward? That is my mission. That's my vision. That is my prayer, that we can stop one person from entering this cycle. And personally for me, I think I told you this when I first spoke to you, the first interview I did. I said one of the things that hurt me to my core was out of the 22,000 inmates that in South Carolina Department of Corrections, 2,000 of them were veterans. So you got men and women who served their country, who put it all on the line, who, for whatever reason, ended up incarcerated. And many of them have spent more time in prison than they spent serving their country. But they served and they gave all, and they were broken. They came back with post-traumatic stress disorder or struggling, and they weren't treated, or they were afraid to get treated. And now they have a life sentence. And the life sentence isn't that they're going to be in prison forever. The life sentence is that they were a convict or are a convict. And because of that, mental illness and incarceration, most people don't forgive those things.
It's back to the stigma, and it's also back to the people don't want to get involved until it's in their backyard, their family. And I spent a lot of time with my foundation having people pat me on the back, but they don't want to know more. They don't want to get involved because there's a fear that they have. We've done shows on just the fear that people have. This is on chapter 4, TEDx Moncton.
Yep.
I love this quote. I'm going to read it slow because I want people to think about this. See, a lot of what we're going through here is that people can't understand something about the individual that's going through their problem. And let me just read it now with that preface. From the outside looking in, it's hard to understand. From the inside looking out, it's hard to explain. Yeah, Lefford, there's some basic things that ought to be done that you've brought out in your book. You've given some wonderful success stories of some people that were mentally ill that when they got the proper medication, they got their lives stabilized. And so I want to talk about that in a second. But before I come back to that one, housing, treatment, medication, people who care about them. Those are what you kind of have near the end of the book as the 4 pieces to the puzzle that need to be in place for a mentally disturbed, ill person, a troubled person that just can't navigate properly. If they've got housing, they're not homeless, they're not out on the street, and they're in treatment. Your book's got so much about how treatment can work, but that they're not getting it for all the above reasons that you described. They can't afford it. It's not offered. It's not available.
They feel good and then they quit it because nobody wants to be seen getting care. But you know what? I got something wrong in that lineup, Steve. The first thing should be people that care.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
That is the deal. That is the deal. The first thing that needs to happen is that we must care. I'm looking at the poster. I'm looking at the poster behind you, serving the underserved, 85%. You got to ask yourself why these people are underserved. You and I are both believers. And if we sit back and we say, inasmuch as you've done for the least of thee, you've also done for me. And the master said, the question was, what do you want me to do to show our love? Feed them. What do you mean? What should I do for these people? Love them, feed them, visit them. They need to be cared about. And I don't know how to say it better than that. Not doing anything to someone is not the same thing as caring for. When turning a blind eye and say, there is no problem, there is no problem, there is no problem, is a problem. I think that when we get to the point, and to quote President Obama, when somebody on the South Side is hungry, I should feel that pain also. You know what I mean? It's not just, it can't just be because it's your family, because we're all one. We are the body, right? So for me, when we care for the people, and I know you care for people, very few people are going into prisons all over the country trying to get in and do things and teaching them how to take care of their finances so they don't come back and teaching. If we all cared enough to do something, to say something, to make it an agenda, a high agenda item, I think that's when change comes. Even if you want to say, I'm just doing it for me, I want to be selfish. I talked about how much money it costs to treat someone inside the institution versus outside the institution. If that's the only thing you want to do, we'll save billions of tax dollars by doing that. Billions. Lawsuits. We'll treat people. They can be productive citizens, work and pay their own taxes, whatever it takes for us to realize that if we cared for these people, all of us would be better. And I'm sorry I had to go on a tangent, but that is, when I tell you stuff comes through you, it's not from you. I just think that needs to be said before it's mistaken or missed.
Oh, absolutely. In the book, you mentioned CIT, Crisis Intervention Team, and you mentioned mental health courts.
Yes.
And those are 2 parts that most people don't know anything about. I'll preface it with this and let you talk about those 2 things. Some of the things that are available to people if they want to voluntarily submit themselves to a program, there's so much that can be done for these people. But The
Well,
intervention.
not all the time. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm
No,
sorry.
no, no. Take it from there. I'm
Yeah,
just summarizing it too quickly, maybe.
no. I mean, like as I said earlier, you can go and say that you're depressed and anxious and all this. They might ask you the 5 questions, and I won't tell you the 5 questions because you may need help. But there are questions that they ask you to see if you're going to be harm to yourself or harm to somebody else. You know the deal. And if you don't meet a certain criteria, if you're not sick enough, you won't be seen. So some people can know something and feel something, but they may not be able to get help, especially if you can't afford it. So that's a part of it. Crisis intervention training is something that typically you're not going to go ask for. It's going to be done unto you. Police or officials will see someone acting out, and they're identifying the signs and symptoms of mental distress, and they're trying to handle somebody without hurting that person. That's not something you want done to you. That's something that happens. It's like nobody. I want you to know CPR if I have a heart attack. I want you to understand what it looks like if I'm having a stroke. I don't want to have a stroke and I don't want to have a heart attack. I just want you trained to assist me. You know what I mean? So a part of that thing is a lot of law enforcement weren't properly trained on crisis intervention training. In our county, in our state, we didn't have that many. A cool thing now, based on this TED Talk, based on some of the work that I was able to do, and I don't like to brag, and so I'm not saying this to brag, but we have started since this talk came out. It was directly attributed to the reason that now all law enforcement in the state of South Carolina have to get at least 8 hours of mental health awareness, so they can, or mental health first aid, so they can know how to identify people struggling with mental health. So just one person with a big mouth can go out there and they can change the state law. We could do that all over the place. CIT and mental health courts. Mental health courts is if there's a way to treat somebody and identify whether that person needs incarceration or needs treatment. In the past, it was just like you're going to get incarcerated. You figure it out later. Now they could take a look and see this person's has mental health issues. We can put them in this path, get them care versus incarcerate them. So, and we had 6 of our counties that did that versus 46. So we're getting to the point where that's better. And I know I'm throwing you off agenda, but all of that is the stuff that we can really do to make it better. But the person struggling with mental health issues or mental illness may not understand that this is what they need.
Oh, I got that. No,
Yeah.
look, the purpose of the show today was to get you back on the show and let people know that you're more than just a pretty face. That you're,
Well, you know.
yeah. Well, I don't know
Hell.
about that, but I asked your wife. No, but the point is, you're one of the strongest advocates for this, helping people get proper treatment out there. I mean, you've done your TED Talk, you've written the book, you're traveling all around, and you're getting great results, but they're not a thimble in an ocean for what needs to be done. We both know that. So the purpose of this show today, it's like an infomercial almost. I want people to know more about this subject that needs so much to be done. Let's tell them how to get the book. I highly, highly recommend this book. You won't put it down if you have any personal experience whatsoever around anybody that's got a mental illness, because the consequences for people that have mental illnesses for acting out is so horrific.
It's life and death, Steve. It can be life and death.
Well, yeah, everybody needs to know. You might not think you need to know right now, but let me tell you, if it ever befalls your family, you're going to want to know in a hurry. And everybody's going to be thankful that there's a guy like you out there that's already doing the politicking and the advocacy out there. So this book is a primer. It's got so much information. Really, Lefford, I compliment you for. I mean, this book, you told me it was the background you did for the TED Talk where you really had to get your facts and statistics. You did a 9.5-minute TED Talk and you did 2 years of research, I think.
Yeah. And not only my 2 years in research, years of research by people for the American Correctional Association, the National Institute of Corrections, behavioral health, the state, a lot of other TED Talks. I'll tell you, there are a lot of people that are studying this issue because there are a lot of people that have been affected